Now today we're working on this solve for any variable equation, and in my first video I talked about problem 1, the front side of this assignment. If you look at the back side of this assignment, it's called inverse equations, and we're going to practice actually getting inverse equations. Now remember, when we do that, first I'm going to look at problem 1 and think of this problem as y equals negative x plus 2. Now remember, when we find an inverse equation, we just switch the x and y, so this will become x equals negative y plus 2. Now to solve this equation, I need to get the y alone, so I'm going to begin by subtracting the 2 over to the other side. Now I cannot combine a 2 who doesn't have an x with an x, so I'm going to leave them separated. This becomes x minus 2 equals negative y. Now remember, there's actually an invisible 1 here in front of the y, so this is actually negative 1y. To get rid of the negative 1, I'm going to divide by negative 1, and when I do this, I have to do it to everything in the equation. X divided by negative 1 will give me a negative x. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 will give me a positive 2, and that will equal negative 1 divided by negative 1 just gives me a positive 1y. Since y is alone, this is my answer. Now, a lot of times when students do these problems, they tend to think that to find an inverse, they can just go through and change the signs. And so this problem, they would have said, oh, well, this becomes a positive on my x and a negative on my 2. But notice how that is not our inverse function. So when you find an inverse, you want to make sure you go through this work of switching the x and y and solving for y. It's not enough to just simply go through and change all the signs. Let's go ahead and try one more problem. Let's do maybe number 5. So here on problem 5, I notice I have this third root right here that I'm going to need to deal with. But before I can do anything with him, I need to get him alone. So to start out, I'm going to switch the x and y. So this problem will become x equals 6 minus the third root of 4y over 2. Now I'm going to start by getting rid of that fraction, and I do that by multiplying by 2 on both sides of the equation. So that will give me that 2 times x equals 6 minus the third root of 4y. Now I still want the y alone, which means I need to get rid of that 6 first. So I'm going to subtract the 6 over to the other side. Now remember, we cannot combine a 2 who has an x on it with a 6 who does not. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave those separated. It will become 2x minus 6 equals the negative third root of 4y. Now I need to get the negative out of there before I can deal with that third root. So I'm going to go ahead and divide on both sides by negative 1. 2x divided by negative 1 gives me negative 2x. Negative 6 divided by negative 1 is positive 6. And that equals the third root of 4y. Now I'm ready to get rid of that third root. And remember that to undo roots, we use powers. If I want to get rid of a third root, I do that by raising both sides of the equation to the third power. Please notice how I put both sides of the equation in parentheses before going to the third power. You absolutely need those parentheses there. So here on the left-hand side then, I now have negative 2x plus 6 to the third power equals, on the right-hand side, my third root and third power have canceled, leaving me with 4y. Last but not least, to get the y alone, I do need to divide on both sides by 4, which will give me that negative 2x plus 6 to the third power over 4 equals y. Y is now alone, which means I am finished with this problem. Go ahead and try the rest of the problems on this page, and in the discussion board, I'll be posting a couple more problems that I've worked out for you. So once you've tried this second page, you can go ahead and check out the discussion board to see some of those problems worked out. Good luck.